Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle and this is a tag video. I don't do tag videos very often, but sometimes there's ones that catch my attention that are not too complicated. Usually why I'm not doing very many tag videos is because I find them really stressful. They can be really hard to find books that answer the question, but this one was easy to do and ones that I had lots of options to choose from. So today I'm doing the Why Haven't I Read These Books Yet tag. And I'm doing, I saw this video on Alice and the Giant Bookshelf, and she did it with books I've owned for more than 10 years, and that's what caught my attention because I have a lot of books on my shelf that I've owned for more than 10 years that I have not read, so I knew it would be really easy to do this one. This tag was inspired by Crystal at Fiber Artsy, and then it was turned into a tag by Greg at Another Bibliophile Reads. I'm going to link all of these people in the description box down below, so go and check them out. Greg said about this tag, we all have books that have been sitting around on our shelves or just in our mind's shelf for a long time, but for some reason or other we haven't read those books yet. Why? Please feel free to ignore the prompts. The original video was limited to science fiction, but I'm mixing it up a bit, but it's fine to pick a bunch of books from your favorite genre if that's your wheelhouse. So I'm going with the way that Alice did these, which is books that have been on my shelf for more than 10 years. I actually don't have a problem with the fact that I have hundreds of books on my shelves that I have not read yet. I am totally fine with that. I'm a book collector. I enjoy collecting books. I enjoy book buying. I enjoy hunting for books. And so because of all of those things, I don't feel pressure to read all the books on my shelves before I get any more. We've got the space, or you could say we don't have the space because we have piles of books that are on the floor as well. But I'm not pressured to read them. I'll read them when I read them. I love having them around so that they're there to read when I want them. I don't feel pressure to take books off my shelves and to give them away if I haven't read them in like 5 years or something. Yeah, I'm happy to have them because maybe 20 years down the road, that's going to be the perfect time to read that book. I don't know. And so I really don't have a problem with this, but I do think it is interesting to take a look at some of these books, and maybe a tag like this will encourage me to read these books this year when I may not have read them for a few more years. Okay, so let's just dive straight into this. The first prompt is a classic book, and because I have so many, I actually have 2 books for each of the prompts. So for classics, I am going to go with The Flying Inn by G.K. Chesterton. This one's been on my shelves for at least 13 years. The reason I know that is because 13 years ago, Aaron and I got LibraryThing.com, and we put all of our books on LibraryThing. So any book that is from 2009, that's when we started. So it's been on our shelves for a minimum of 13 years, but it's likely actually longer than that. Some of these possibly even 20 years. So at least 13 years is The Flying Inn by G.K. Chesterton. I really like the Father Brown stories that he's written, but I've never actually read any of his other books. An exuberant man as well as a prolific and gifted writer, G.K. Chesterton was a man with very strong opinions and extremely capable of defending them. In this hilarious satirical romp, Chesterton demonstrates his intense distrust of power and progressives, railing against prohibition, vegetarianism, theosophy, and other dreary and oppressive forces of modernity. In a spirited response to the government's attempt to curtail alcohol sales, Humphrey Pump, called Hump, a pub owner in the fishing village of Pebblewick, takes to the road in a donkey cart. Accompanied by Captain Patrick Dalroy, a crimson-haired giant with a tendency to burst into song, Hump provisions the cart with a cask of good rum, a giant round of cheese, and the signpost from his pub, The Flying Inn. Together, the 2 men extend good cheer to the increasingly restless populace as they attempt to evade prohibition. In a journey that becomes a rollicking madcap adventure, the 2 travel around England, encountering revolution, romance, and a cast of memorable characters. All right, so this was originally published in 1914. The second classic is In the Roar of the Sea by S. Baring-Gould, a tale of mystery and intrigue on the wild, windswept coast of Cornwall. I've had this for 12 years and I haven't read it yet, and I don't know why, because there's so much about this book that, you know, that is perfect for me. I love that it is set in Cornwall, and it was originally published in 1892. On the wild, storm-swept coast of North Cornwall stood the village of South Edinock? Desolate, remote, and shrouded in secrecy. On dark, stormy nights, the Black Prince would anchor offshore, waiting to run her cargo onto the beach, and men would hold ready for the sounds of wrecking, for salvage and plunder. Only Judith Trevisa stood firm against the evil greed of the wreckers. 18 years old and trying desperately to protect her brother from the influences around him, she alone dared to defy the black figure which dominated the village, the captain of the Black Prince, the man they called Cruel Copinger. Doesn't that sound amazing? Yeah, it does. Okay, the second prompt is a fiction book. Again, I have two. This is Topper Takes a Trip by Thorne Smith. I've had this on my shelves for at least 13 years, possibly longer. This is a pocketbook edition, and it is originally published in 1932, and my edition is from 1945. I love this edition. I think it's fantastic. Topper's hilarious troubles began when his friends, the Kirbys, got killed in an automobile accident and then embarked upon invisible and ectoplasmic escapades, which invariably involved Topper, and to his wife's increasing annoyance. Finally, after completely disrupting community life in Glendale, Topper takes his wife to the Riviera, both to escape his scandalized neighbors and in the hope that his wife might forget the past in the gay whirl of the unconventional and cosmopolitan Riviera. Unfortunately, the Kirbys show up there too. And what is worse, they bring three invisible and only semi-respectable friends with them: Colonel Scott, Mrs. Hart, and the Colonel's dog, Oscar. By dint of super canine effort, Oscar can, upon occasion, materialize his tail, but no more. Topper's Riviera holiday may be a trial for him, but it will be a laugh for you from its beginning to the end of a dogless, wagging tail. Roland Young has immortalized the character of Topper on the screen. Here you can read more about Topper's adventures, which makes me wonder if there was a movie out about Topper and then someone decided to write a book. I find that interesting. I might have to do a little bit of research. Do you guys know? I would love to know about that. And if it's set in the Riviera, maybe I need to read this month. It sounds like a good summer read. All right. And then the other one for fiction is The Foolish Gentlewoman by Margery Sharp. This was originally published in 1948. And in my copy, I have this, which I think is fantastic. A quick preview of The Foolish Gentlewoman by Margery Sharp, a report by Christopher Morley. And Christopher Morley is the guy who wrote The Haunted Bookshop and Parnassus on Wheels. So he writes his little synopsis, and then on the back there's a bit of a biography about Margery Sharp by Archibald J. Ogden, and there's a picture of her. Perhaps we don't realize until we come upon so delightful a book as this, how we might have starved for novels of high and pleasant comedy. Our readers know Margery Sharp's crisp humor and her keen sense of drama, but I don't think she has ever done anything more artful and ingenious than this. She deals with agreeable, intelligent, and usual people. Her skill is so well concealed that you will hardly notice until you finish how gaily she has arranged the pattern, and how subtly she has suggested that the nicest people also have their fantauds and despairs. I must be careful not to tell you too much, for every movement in her plot is processed for surprise or suspense. The Foolish Gentlewoman is Isabel Brocken, plump and charming and scatterbrained widow of 55 or so, who has come back in 1946 to live in her old home, Chipping Lodge, in the bomb-beaten, well-to-do suburb of London. Domestic and suburban details are vividly faithful to the mixed comedy and pathos of a life trying to readjust after war. Doesn't that sound amazing? I need to read this book soon too. See, this is what's great about this, is because you get books that have been sitting on your shelves for so long and then you just kind of forget what it was that grabbed your attention about them in the first place. So I think all of these books are going to end up on my TBR cart to be read very soon. All right. The third prompt is non-fiction books, and so I've got a couple of those. Nicholas and Alexandra by Robert K. Massey. This has been on my shelves for at least 13 years, probably more. This was originally published in 1967. And look what I just discovered opening it up. Read and Return, Mom. Oh my goodness, I've had this on my shelf for more than 13 years and I was supposed to read this and give it back to my mom. I'm sorry, Mom. Oh my goodness. Okay, the story of the Tsar, his Empress, and the realm they lost. The story of a man, a woman, and the love they shared, and of the obscene monk Rasputin who corrupted and destroyed them. This sounds great. Again, why haven't I read this? I love Russian history and I am very fascinated by Rasputin. He is such an interesting historical figure. And then the other one is a true crime. This is Murder at the Met by David Black. This has been on my shelf for 12 years. On July 23rd, 1980, Helen Hagnes Mintinks, sorry, a pretty blonde violinist, left the orchestra pit of the Metropolitan Opera House during an intermission. She never came back. The following day, her naked and bloody body was found, bound and gagged at the bottom of an air shaft. Here is the true behind-the-headlines account, written with the full cooperation of the two detectives involved. It takes us backstage at the Met through the maze of eerie staircases and corridors to give a riveting account of the painstaking investigation that began in bitter rivalry and ended in shared glory for the two men whose extraordinary teamwork finally cracked one of the most baffling cases in the history of the New York City Police Department. Again, amazing. Why haven't I read this yet? That sounds so interesting. I'm going to find out when this was published. 1984. Based on the exclusive accounts of detectives Mike Struck and Jerry Giorgio of how they solved the Phantom of the Opera case. Yeah. Okay. The fourth prompt is genre books. And so here I decided to go with a mystery and a gothic romance. I am a sucker for gothic romances. And so first I have Hawkridge by Jane Blackmore. This has been on my shelf for 12 years. Look at this cover. Isn't that fantastic? The lonely, treacherous moors and bogs of England set the stage for Murder Most Foul in this spellbinding new novel by one of Britain's favorite authors. This was published in 1976. One by one, the Brett family dies. Untimely deaths by unnatural causes. The inheritance of the stately manor Hawkridge is the motive. A slow, deliberate, cunning process of elimination is the method. Emma Jane, caught in this house of horror, tries desperately to unmask the demon of destruction, but he is too quick, too shrewd in his relentless pattern of evil. Each new deadly success brings him closer to Hawkridge, and Emma Jane closer to the truth she knows he will never allow her to reveal. Doesn't that sound good? Okay, and then the other one is The Crimes of Charlotte Bronte by James Tully. And this has been on my shelf for at least 13 years. And I'm guessing that one of the reasons why I haven't read this yet is because it looks to me, here's a little bookmark, like I started this and then put it down and never finished it. And it could be because maybe I didn't look very closely when I bought it and I thought that it was just historical mystery, but The Secret History of the Mysterious Events at Haworth, this is a novel, it is fiction, but they're describing it as a true story that needed to be told as fiction in order to tell it kind of idea, and I think that maybe I didn't really like that so much. The story of the lives of the Bronte family is as haunting and tragic as their novels. Three sisters and an alcoholic brother shut in the bleak and claustrophobic parsonage at Haworth. Noted criminologist James Tully became fascinated by inconsistencies he found in the accounts of the lives and deaths of the Brontes, and soon became enmeshed in seeking out the mysteries of Haworth. So dark and unexpected were the results of his researches, he decided to tell the story in the form of a novel which brings to the fore many disturbing questions. How did three sisters in a remote parsonage know so much about the darker passions of love? Did Charlotte's husband, Arthur Nichols, have a relationship with Emily that resulted in her pregnancy? Poet and artist, drug user and alcoholic, was Branwell also an expert blackmailer? Was Anne poisoned to stop her revealing the truth about Emily's death? All of which leads to one final question. Was there a cold-blooded and calculating murderer at the heart of the Bronte household? So I think I would have liked this, I think, if it was just done as like a straight historical mystery, but the fact that they're trying to say that it was true, I think is what put me off, but I am gonna read it. Okay, and then the fifth prompt is the book owned for the longest time but not read yet. And I don't actually know because, like I said, we've cataloged our books on Library Thing, and so they're all, the ones that we had in 2009 all went on. So I don't know anymore, but I just thought I'd grab a couple more that were put on there in 2009. So they've been on our shelves for a minimum of 13 years, but more likely longer than that. So the first one here is Words for Murder, Perhaps, by Edward Candy. There's a killer lurking in the British halls of learning. This was published in 1971. Gregory Roberts, middle-aged and still living with his mum, teaches English literature at the University of Bantwich's extramural department. That's adult education in American. This term, his course is called Crime Fiction Past and Present. The old ladies who generally take his classes are quite excited by the new topic, until the crimes at the university become all too factual. The first victim is a distinguished professor of Egyptology, poisoned. The only clue is an obscure bit of English poetry, a line from a spookily appropriate elegy. As similar murders follow with similarly literary clues, the police naturally assume that the killer is someone rather bookish. Someone like the unfortunate Gregory Roberts. So yeah, I can see why I picked it up, though all those things are buzzwords for me, so I'm totally going to be reading that soon. And then I chose a Velda Johnston. I have about 5 books by her on my shelves, and I think I've read 2 of them. This one is A Room with Dark Mirrors, and this is from the 70s. She wrote in the 70s, primarily, I think. This one is from 1975. I have a gun in my pocket, the well-dressed stranger standing on the Paris sidewalk said. You are not to scream, mademoiselle. You are to get into that car between those 2 gentlemen in the back seat. Stricken dumb, Dorothy Wagner stared up at the handsome Frenchman through the hazy spring sunlight. Even before the jumbo jet left New York, the young stewardess realized she was in for a nerve-wracking flight and layover in Paris. How could it be otherwise when among the passengers in her charge was Eric, the doggedly attentive ex-husband she had recently divorced? But it was not until the handsome stranger threatened her the next morning that her Paris day took its first nightmarish turn. The Frenchman and his silent colleagues must have been insane to try to kidnap a harmless American on a busy street. Or had the chilling words been her own hallucination? The police obviously thought so because they accepted the stranger's denials, dismissing her complaint. There were other threats so furtive that Dorothy wondered if she had imagined them, and the next morning when she awoke in the seedy Left Bank Hotel where she had taken refuge, she was haunted by the memory of a vivid dream. In it, the handsome Frenchman drove her across Paris to a dark, mirrored room. Only minutes after she dismissed the dream from her thoughts, evidence that she had indeed left the hotel sometime during the night confronted her. Had the dream been real? Or had she wandered alone through the nighttime streets, hallucinating about people in a dark, mirrored room? Here is an absorbing novel of love and danger, of a girl torn between doubting her own sanity and believing that a group of strangers had chosen her to be the victim of a plot as senseless as it was terrifying. Doesn't that sound great? So there you have it. Those are the books that have been on my shelves, some of the books that have been on my shelves for more than 10 years. The sixth prompt is to tag people. And so I chose people that I wanted to know what's been on their shelves for a really long time. So I am going to tag Breezy Ann Reads, Miriam Elizabeth Reads, Storm Reads, and Mitzi Reads and Writes. And I don't think I did that on purpose, but they all have Reads in their name. So I don't know if you guys have done this or not, but I would love to see your answers to this tag. And I will see you for another video soon. Bye.